Good Friday is a sacred reminder of the greatest sacrifice ever made in human history. It is the day when love was misunderstood, truth was rejected, and innocence was crucified. On this day, believers across the world pause to remember the suffering, death, and sacrifice of Jesus Christ, whose life was an expression of divine love and whose death became the foundation of human salvation. Good Friday calls humanity to silence, reflection, repentance, and gratitude, because what happened on this day was not an accident of history but the fulfillment of God's eternal plan of redemption. The story of Good Friday begins with love that existed before time itself. God's love for humanity was so deep that He chose to send His only Son into a broken world. Jesus did not come as a powerful ruler or a military leader. He came in humility, born in a manger, living among ordinary people, sharing their pain, hunger, rejection, and suffering. His life was a living message of compassion, forgiveness, mercy, and truth. Everywhere He went, He healed the sick, restored the broken, lifted the rejected, and forgave the sinner. His love was not selective, it reached everyone without condition. Jesus knew from the beginning that His mission would lead Him to the cross. Yet He never turned away from it. He did not avoid suffering, nor did He escape pain. His obedience to the will of the Father was rooted in love for humanity. Good Friday reminds us that true love is not proven by words but by sacrifice. Jesus did not merely speak about love, He demonstrated it by giving His life. The night before His crucifixion, Jesus shared a final meal with His disciples. Though His heart was heavy with the knowledge of betrayal and suffering, He chose to serve. He washed the feet of His disciples, teaching them humility and selfless love. At the table, He broke bread and shared the cup, symbolizing His body and blood that would soon be offered for the forgiveness of sins. Even in His final hours, Jesus focused not on Himself but on preparing His followers to understand the meaning of what was about to happen. After the supper, Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. This was the place where His inner struggle became visible. The weight of humanity's sin pressed heavily upon His soul. He experienced deep sorrow, anguish, and distress. His prayer revealed His humanity as He asked the Father if the cup of suffering could pass from Him. Yet His prayer also revealed His divine obedience when He surrendered His will completely to God. In that garden, before the nails ever touched His hands, Jesus won the greatest spiritual battle by choosing obedience over escape and love over comfort. The betrayal that followed was painful and heartbreaking. Judas, one of His own disciples, identified Jesus with a kiss. A symbol of affection became a sign of treachery. Soldiers arrested Jesus as if He were a dangerous criminal. He offered no resistance. He spoke no words of anger. Love stood silent in the face of hatred. His disciples fled in fear, leaving Him alone. The one who had never abandoned anyone was now abandoned by all. Jesus was taken through a series of unjust trials. False witnesses accused Him, and lies were spoken against Him. He was mocked, beaten, and humiliated. Though He was innocent, He was treated as guilty. Though He was truth itself, He was condemned by falsehood. The crowd that once praised Him now shouted for His death. Human injustice reached its peak as the Son of God stood silently before His accusers. The physical suffering of Jesus was beyond description. He was brutally scourged, and His body was torn by the Roman whip. Blood flowed freely as His flesh was wounded. Each lash represented the pain humanity deserved, yet He endured it without complaint. His suffering was not meaningless. Every wound carried healing, every stripe carried redemption, and every drop of blood testified to the depth of God's love for humanity. A crown of thorns was pressed upon His head, mocking His kingship. The soldiers laughed and insulted Him, yet Jesus remained silent. He did not defend Himself. He did not curse His enemies. Even in extreme pain, His heart remained filled with compassion. He carried the cross through the streets, weakened by blood loss and exhaustion. He fell, yet He rose again and continued forward. Love refused to quit. At Golgotha, Jesus was nailed to the cross. The sound of hammer striking nail echoed through history. He was lifted up between heaven and earth, rejected by people and bearing the weight of the world's sin. Darkness covered the land, and creation itself responded to the suffering of its creator. From the cross, Jesus spoke words of forgiveness, compassion, and surrender. He forgave those who crucified him and entrusted his spirit into the hands of the Father. When Jesus breathed his last, the earth shook, and the veil of the temple was torn in two. This moment symbolized that the separation between God and humanity had been removed. Through his death, access to God was made open to all. The sacrifice was complete. The price was paid in full. What seemed like defeat was actually the greatest victory. Good Friday teaches us that suffering is not the end of the story. Love may be wounded, but it is never defeated. The cross stands as a reminder that God's love is stronger than sin, death, and darkness. Though Jesus was buried in a tomb, hope was not buried with him. Resurrection was coming. Good Friday calls each of us to reflect on the depth of God's love and the cost of our salvation. It invites us to respond not with words alone, but with lives transformed by grace. The cross challenges us to forgive as we have been forgiven, to love as we have been loved, and to live in the light of the sacrifice that changed the world forever.